Welcome to another exciting episode of the Average Ontario Anglers Fishing Podcast. I'm your host today. My name is Andrew, and as usual, we have our co-host with Jesse, and he's the handsome one between the two of us. But I can grow better facial hair, so there's a give and take.
Fair.
We also have another good friend joining us today, and his name is Brian Johnston. Not to be confused with Brian Johnston in that Bare Naked Ladies song. You know, he's different.
It's one of my favorite songs.
It's a great song. I'm not knocking it.
Everybody sings it to me all the time, but I'll say it's Brian Johnston with the T. So
there we go. Clear it up. We're gonna get started first of all with a little introduction from Brian. Tell us a little bit about your background, how long you've been guiding for, what your favorite fish to catch is, things like that.
A little background. So I grew up in Haliburton County ever since I was just a wee little boy. Was always around fishing. My dad always took us out, mostly ice fishing, and he had a little ledge and bass boat, which was cool, and he used to catch the frogs, and we'd go fishing. It's always live bait with him. It still is to this day. He's like, "Oh, if we don't have any live bait, we'll just use this piece of bologna on this crappie jig." It's pretty funny, but I didn't really get serious into it until about 2011, and it's mostly ice fishing. And then my good friend Ben James, he was a big bass fisherman, and he showed me how to flip a jig, bud. And then it was game over after that in 2014. And then fished, missed car payments and everything just to make things work to get my little bass tracker going. And then 2021 or 22 is when I started guiding, and it's been going pretty strong with that, and it's really exhilarating and fun. It's fun to see people catch fish when I do it all the time. So
that's awesome. And we're gonna jump back to Brian in a little bit too, but that's just a bit of history. Like, we've known Brian for a bit on social media and stuff like that, and seeing what he's been catching for a while. We were able to get out with him last year. We got out doing some walleye. He just a fun fishing day, and he put on a clinic. Like, Jesse and I, we caught, but like,
he spanked
Brian
us.
Caught. Like, so we can attest to the fact that he is very knowledgeable. We're going to learn a lot from him as a group, me and Jesse included today. But first off, we're going to have an interesting fishing fact from another familiar voice, Jesse. He's going to launch us into something that hopefully will knock our socks off.
I don't know if this is knock your sock off type of interesting fishing fact, but I thought we could do something that some people have asked us many times to talk about. And it's one of those things that we could probably do a whole episode on, but ain't nobody got time for that. So we're just going to do an interesting fishing fact about it. Maybe Brian can weigh in with his expert guided advice on this topic. And the topic is scented fishing lures and fishing scents. Are they a hoax, or do they actually work? I've always thought this. Me and Andrew have used some scents in the past.
All I can think of is the Yum crayfish spray.
Yep.
That I probably spilled like 3 of those bottles in my tackle box over the years.
Yep. The whole bottom of his tackle box is just red color. It looked like blood. It's like,
all
what
the,
do you got
the
in
leaks in the bottom of the boat just looks like an oil spill on top of them.
Yeah. So anyway, obviously for decades and decades, there's been, different fishing scents and sprays and jellies that you put on your lures, right? We think of some of the most popular plastic lure brands like Berkeley. They have Berkeley Power Bait catches 18 times more fish. So a lot of people, believe in that. And a lot of other people are very skeptical. So I thought we could kind of break down how scents actually work in the water, when to use it. And there's a bunch of different types. So maybe what kind of scents or jellies to use at the same time. So the main thing I'd say is, is there actually science behind this, Andrew? What would you say? Do you think that scientifically fishing scents actually work? What do you think, Brian and Andrew?
I think to a point, yeah, especially if you're annoying a fish so much and they won't bite, and you can just give that extra little bit of kick. I think it would work, but I don't know. Sometimes I just grab stuff that's off the bottom of the floor of my boat that's been there for a week. I throw it on and I might catch the fish, but I think it does. I recently just bought, I don't know if it's just a gimmick, but that Nori's, Taco Ito on the Bassmasters, he has this
powder stuff.
Nori's. Yeah, it's a powder stuff. I bought 2 of those when I was in the States, and I was like, this better work. So I don't know. I'm just watch my socials. It might work, it might not. So I call it fish cocaine. That's what it really looks like. I haven't
It literally does.
I haven't opened it up and smelled it, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
What do you think, Andrew?
I I've heard things where they claim that different, water soluble stuff like that, it just can't carry through the water, so it can't be effective. But at the same time, fish themselves, I know there's science behind it where they communicate using, like chemical signals and stuff themselves to signal prey, feeding, signal predators around. So they obviously use scent underwater. They make use of it. So I think that sense can play a difference. I know that it does
Absolutely.
definitely with catfish. You use stinky chicken liver
Oh, yeah.
or catfish, you catch more than like a worm. Like it's better when it smells.
Yeah.
Really
Use
grungy and gross.
stinky chicken liver with other fish, you don't catch anything. So it's actually interesting, like you mentioned, fish actually, their olfactory systems are very, very sensitive. All different kinds of fish. Catfish, like you mentioned, definitely is one of the top tier fish that uses its sense, but also other fish like bass, trout, and our topic today, walleye as well. They have the ability to detect amino acids, oils, and pheromones, like Andrew said, like all underwater. And we have to think like sometimes you pick up a bag of plastic bait and like we all have like, the Berkeley power bait for me. It's very nostalgic. I crack it open, I smell it. It just reminds me of fishing. Like I like that smell. And to other people, it smells like, rotten fish, but I like the smell. But some of these bait packages you open up, like bait fuel or other stuff, you smell it and you're like, it doesn't smell like anything. How could this possibly work? But the point is fish, walleye, bass, muskie, all these fish, they can pick up chemical trails in the water. Like I said, amino acids, oils, and pheromones, stuff that we personally can't smell. We don't have the ability to smell those things, but fish can. We have to think too, like when you're using a fishing lure, like you may have a lure with like flash or sound or rattles, stuff like that. That's stuff that the fish could see or feel temporarily as the lure goes by. But with scent, it actually lingers in the water and creates a scent trail. So like you have to think like a shark can smell blood and follow that for miles because of the scent trail. Fish can do something similar. They're not like hunting down, your bait for miles of your yum dinger, but maybe. So scent actually stays in the water. Oftentimes, you spray some scent on your jig or whatever, and you chalk it in the water, and you'll just see like the oil slick on the surface. So like that, you have to think that's going in the water as well. And it goes in the point that they're like at Berkeley testing lab, as covered by this one article. They're like, it shows that the bass held onto the lure up to 18 times longer with the scent. So there's obviously some science involved, having some scent on a bait or just like plain, plain plastic, all plastic.
Maybe that fish was starved in the tank and they're like, it'll make it bite for 18 seconds.
100%. All of these tests are probably flawed to some point.
Yeah, I imagine there is definitely some scientific that a lot of bait companies, they got to sell a product and they're like, we're diving in. We're going to put a big paycheck, figure it out. So I imagine some stuff definitely does work. So, and I think even scent could, just say if you had like sunscreen, right? And you're rubbing it on and you're like, well, now it's all over my lures. Maybe like even that spray stuff could probably work.
Yeah,
I've heard
like
bug spray is like
smell.
really bad. But WD-40, like guys used to swear by WD-40 when they went out fishing for like sturgeon and stuff, even on the West Coast. They still use that. I'm not endorsing the fact of spraying WD-40 into the water and stuff.
It's definitely an old man's trick. Like my dad done it with white tubes for lake trout when I was a kid. I was like, yeah, WD-40 is just fish oil. And I like actually like a couple of years ago I researched it. I was like, this isn't fish oil.
I think like back in the day, it did have some kind of animal oils in it, but now it doesn't. Yeah, I've heard of that before. So anyway, regardless of if you think scents work, fish can smell scents. So the next point is when are 3 situations where using scents could be beneficial? And this is, it's going to be up to you and what you see on the water. One is in cold water. We oftentimes think like right now, well, when this comes out, it'll be closed, but as we're recording this, me and Andrew are really hoping to get out early season bass fishing when the water's really cold, right? So oftentimes the fish aren't overly aggressive. They're not, chasing your lure off, chasing it after. They're just like sitting in one spot. They're very lethargic. And just to get them to bite sometimes, if you have your jig sitting on the bottom and they're just staring at it and they're not overly inclined to eat it, having that extra scent could be the thing that gets them to bite. That could be one thing. The second point is saying in stained or muddy water, again, it has like a scent trail. Could it possibly help the fish find your bait better? Possibly. And the third one is, I'm a huge believer in this myself, is pressured or heavily fished water. I feel like a lot of baits are very popular, like say like a drop shot. In certain lakes where we fish, everyone fishes a drop shot. That's a way to catch fish. It's always going to catch fish. It's a great technique to catch fish, like smallmouth bass. And everyone's using similar baits, right? Everyone's always trying new stuff. Oh, you got to try the dice baits, just because the fish have seen so many little swim baits and little drop shot baits. But if your bait smells better than everyone else's bait, you know what they say, the better the bait, the less the weight, or something like that. Like, I feel like in those situations, it could be a deal, you know, like that's the thing, right? What do you think, Brian?
I mean, the way I look at it is like, even if it's just 1%, if it just is 1% going to help you catch a bite, that 1% can go a long way. Like, even if it's just like, why not take the 1% if it's going to help you out with scent and stuff like that too, right? So that's my theory anyways. I don't use a lot. I use a lot of the Max Scent by Berkeley just because I just like their lures too. But I have like some like fish spray that I do throw on and throw it in bags and stuff and let it soak in for a little bit if it doesn't leak everywhere. But
Andrew style. So, like we mentioned before, there's different kinds of scents that you can add on your lure. There's oil-based, there's water-soluble gels. We think of like Berkeley Alive Spray, they have a little spray that sprays onto your lure. There's also like paste. I know they have like smelly jelly, something that I've used, or other stuff that you kind of smear onto some baits. Very popular for ice fishing too.
And onto the tip of your sandwich later too.
Yep.
you remember the liquid mayhem? Yeah, that stuff got everywhere and stained everything. Stained all my shirts and stuff like that. It was pretty bad.
And then we have to think of, say you're deciding to get scents, because all this information we've talked about right now, it seems like very logical thing to do. So what are some of the most common scents? Well, Andrew will tell you crayfish smell from his crayfish spray. That's popular for like jigs, Texas rigs, creature bait, stuff like that. They also have a lot of like shad or minnow smells for scents, and you can add that on, again, all kinds of things, but also swim baits, jerk baits, other stuff like that. And then you think of like regular weird smells that have nothing to do with fish, like garlic. Like garlic is like the OG smell. I love smelling like remember the old Strike King like lizards? You open it up, it smells like garlic. And it seems something like that wouldn't make sense at all.
Coffee, like Strike King has a coffee tube.
Yeah,
Coffee
they smell
tubes,
amazing.
Why
Yep.
coffee?
And
What
I think with this, a lot of times, like you said, it kind of masks the smells of the angler that maybe like sunscreen, bug spray, cigarettes, whatever you've touched on your hands, you touch your bait. I think garlic kind of just masks the smell of that, in my opinion.
It could also even just cover the scent of actually what the plastic is when it comes actually from the manufacturer too, right? So instead of smelling like chemicals, so at least it smells at least something better than that. So, I don't know.
Exactly.
I'm just a dude that likes to fish. I don't know all this. I don't own a bait company, so.
So just to wrap this up, I know we all kind of decided if it makes sense or not. And I think this is more about confidence in general, right? Like we always say, a confident angler catches more fish. So if this is something that makes sense to you and it gives you more confidence when you are fishing, I feel like you will catch more fish on it. And if you believe it's total crap and it doesn't make any sense and it's a scam, that's great. Save your money, buy some more baits. But I feel like, in my opinion, it's something that can be helpful in the right circumstances and for the right type of lure fishing. So that's the interesting fishing fact this week. And we are going to now talk about something a little more interesting, right, Andrew?
I don't know if it's more interesting because I did really like that. That's kudos to you, Jesse. Another great fishing fact. We don't rank them anymore, but you know that's at least a thumbs up on that one.
I get a double thumbs up.
Aw, thanks, Brian.
I could put my toe up in there too.
I'm going to have to edit that out later.
There's a hole in my sock too, so.
That's why I have to edit it out.
So this is going to be a fun episode. We recently, last week actually, we had tactical fishing gear. We were talking about walleye fishing on like St. Clair, stuff like that, some of the Great Lakes kind of things. And if anyone has fished both the Great Lakes area and then potentially further up north, either like Kawarthas or up, up by Brian's stomping grounds, Haliburton, stuff like that, you'll know it's a completely different ball game. And from if you're used to one, you are not used to the other, and you could feel like a fish out of water, pun intended. The goal is to get fish out of water. So we're going to work on actually having, being able to achieve that. And Brian's going to tell us some of his like hot, juicy tips about catching walleye in kind of the more northern style of lakes. We're going to talk about some of different times of the year, seasonal movements, bite windows, things like that. What his favorite techniques are, what he likes to use. You are getting the actual facts from him on a guy who does this professionally. He guides. This is his livelihood in the summer times to actually get people on fish. So first off, where would you find, starting in the spring, where would you find walleye? What are your top locations that you're looking for on a lake that, again, is more of those northern style lakes?
Well, first of all, like I'm down on Michigan right now. Like I'm looking at the St. Clair River, and I was out here last year, and I did not catch one in the river because it's just totally different, right? I'm like vertical jigging, like 3/4 ounce jig, like I'm going with the current. So I'm excited to actually listen to that last episode to get some tips. So that's actually pretty sweet because I'm also an average angler myself. But uh, so Northern Lakes is a little bit different just because like even the quarters can be a little bit different from Halliburton because that's on like where zone 17 and 16 is and where I am in zone 15. That's like the cusp of like the north like Canadian Shield and I guess that would be the what is that? St.
Lowlands, like
Lawrence
Corsa
Plain.
Lowlands or something like that.
That's it. So a lot of my lakes do have shallower weeds like what the Kawartha is like balsam and sturgeon, and there is like these techniques do apply the exact same way too. But there's like where I fish, like they go down to 220 feet. So in sense, you can actually eliminate a lot of water because it's just like they're not going to be out 122 feet of water. I mean, some fish do weird things. Trust me, I've seen walleye suspend in 80 feet of water off of a hump. I'm like, what's going on? But typically, though, sorry, what was the question again? I'm going on.
See, we're overloading him, or he's overloading with all this
Yeah,
information swimming
my
around in his head.
brain's like Windows 98 on dial-up sometimes. So
We'll give you a basic MS DOS prompt here, okay? So during the springtime, where are your top locations that you look for targeting walleye?
well, first of all, river inlets and outlets. So if you know where the walleye spawn, they're not going to be far off of that, especially at opener. And in Kawarthas, it's I think it's the second week of May, and then in zone 15 where I'm at, it's the third week. But river mouths are huge, just where they spawn because they're not going to be far from that, especially if you go at night and post up in this fast current with a coarse rock. Put your boat up there, throw an anchor. They're all going to come in when the bugs get really bad and the sun comes down. Bring your muskol. Don't get it on your baits. Maybe just a percent for that. But I've done that like when I first got into fishing. Like I used to do that all the time, and it's very easy. And you just wait for them to come in and just throw a jerk bait or a crankbait. You can literally throw it in the current if you're placed right in it, and let it sit in the hole or even up really shallow. Like there's going to be fish moving in there, maybe a 30-minute or even an hour window, and maybe be a second run after that. From there, also from river mouths, is that you want to look for adjacent stuff from that too. So that could be like humps, weed, like cabbage or milfoil, especially when it's at that time, like it's freshly growing actively. Those would be the areas I would really target around those areas of inlets and outlets, especially when they like current is huge at that time. And then you're gonna get your humps. So if you actually pull up your Navionics and looked at a map and look for the inflow and outflow and follow that current line all the way down, you can find adjacent stuff. So when you're looking at the map, you want to start at the inflow and look around there from weed edges or like a point that might have a rock pile or a weed edge off of that with quick water drop off. And if you keep on following that current line, there might be a secondary hump somewhere in that current line that they might break off and then sit on it. And same goes with the inflow, or sorry, would it be the outflow? I got it backwards. Inflow at the top. No, it'd be outflow at the top, and then God darn it.
Water coming in at the top, water going out at the bottom.
That's exactly it.
Perfect.
So
it's science.
It's science. Sometimes I'm not really good at it, but I try.
You've been busy recently too, so you absolutely get a break. You've been a busy guy driving all over, doing a bunch of fishing recently too.
Yeah, I was down in Florida for a whole month fishing largemouth. And I always dreamed about doing that as a kid, with my little crappy boat. I'm like, I want to go to Florida at least 6 months of the year, but I could do it for a month. And I finally am able to do that. But back to walleye.
Yeah.
So no more
So
largemouth, please.
So on lakes, is there a difference between, let's say, like a shallow, like mid-sized lake to, let's say, a deep, cold lake? Is it still kind of the same stuff, making sure you find that current and just finding those adjacent structures to it?
Yeah, it still applies, right? Like again, in the deeper water, you can eliminate a lot of that water because, I would stay anywhere from that 30 foot and up. Like 25 is 20 foot's a pretty sweet spot for that, especially if it's a hump that comes out of deep water access that comes up. They're going to probably be around those humps and just sitting there. And another good tip is, especially at that time, all the smallmouth that pretty much occupy all that stuff, like throughout the summer, are busy up shallow, either on a bed spawning or just shallow feeding. So you might, whack into a couple of smallmouth here and there, but from what I've experienced, a lot of those areas are really populated. Like those walleye really take advantage of that and sit there and eat all that bait until the smallmouth are done spawning and kind of come in with them. So
They are bullies, though, so they'll kick them right out of there.
get out of here! This is mine. Darn walleyes.
So as the spring gets a bit further on, then what do they start doing? Like, do they stay on these same structures? And then when do they start feeding? Is there prime times for feeding still? Like, being this early in the season, are they really concerned about the evening bite, or is it kind of whenever?
I think walleye will always bite in the evening or early mornings. For me, I personally like the evening bite for that, just because walleye have the eyes to absorb a lot more light than most fish, right? So you said if the
Yeah,
what
with
fish
water
do,
warming up,
yeah,
do they start to move off those spots too?
yeah, they'll transition to some deeper water off the humps and stuff, like especially in those deeper, colder lakes, they'll like kind of sit below it and move up eventually. But in the shallower stuff, like especially if it's a lake that's say 30 feet deep or 35, 40 foot deep, and there's just full of weed, they will just roam those weed lines up and down constantly. And as soon as that weed keeps on getting taller and taller and taller, they'll just keep on roaming that. Now they do get a little lethargic as the summer goes on, but like usually um in the springtime, like post spawn, like they're really aggressive. Like when you guys went out with me, like we hopped 3 lakes and we ran out of time because I was like, oh, I wanted to go to this one spot. And the next day I went there and threw a jerk bait over like 5 feet of water over like a grass, like a weed flat. And I whacked probably, I think it was like a 29.5. And there was like a couple other 28s. It was an insane day I've ever had. I was like,
And Jesse was really trying to get a walleye on a jerkbait too. And
I know.
he couldn't all day. And then you just nail him next day.
Yeah.
I know. I felt so bad. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, we should have went here. But
I chucked the jerkbait and I caught an out of season smallmouth, an out of season muskie, and a pike on it. No walleye. And then the next day, Brian spanks the walleye on a jerkbait.
yeah, if you guys can actually see, I actually brought some baits here, but this is a smaller mid-diving jerkbait. This is actually a Mega Bass Vision 110 Junior. So this dives a little bit deeper, but I was throwing it on a spinning rod just because it's smaller. It's nicer to do that than on a bait caster with fluorocarbon. But it was perfect. Also, you can do it on your Vision 110, like your perch colors and stuff like that work too. But it's a fun bite when you get into going on a jerkbait. Either even going into, we'll probably talk later about techniques and stuff, but especially with forward facing sonar now, and you can really get that bait really deep, and then it's patience, but it's really fun. But yeah, jerkbait, like even like, are we going to talk about baits now, or
we'll get into that right next? So
okay?
just before we do that, then we'll talk a little bit about like weather fronts, like spring weather. Lots of storms coming in, lots of rain, lots of overcast days, but you can also have those like really hot, sunny days. Like, how does each of those days kind of affect how you fish for walleye?
Well, I think fish are going to, whatever the weather conditions, they're going to do whatever they want, really. So, like, I've had days where it's
Very
like bluebird.
informative. Let's go.
I know. Sorry, guys. Fish are fish. But if I had to choose, like my favorite time to fish with them, it's like overcast and it's windy. Like I always fish the windy side. It might be a pain in the arse, pain in the butt. Is that better? Can I say butt? I'll say that.
You want the walleye chop?
Yeah, the walleye chop, really. So even throwing, your typical bucktail and that weed on those like wind pushed weed edges is really good too. Bluebird, sometimes they just like I've had them sun really shallow on sand. And I find most of the time on bluebird skies where it's nice and calm, like it can be very, very tricky for them to bite, and they just don't care. You put it right in front of their face, they're like, nah, no, thank you.
That was the day we went. Remember how hot it was?
It was hot.
Yeah.
It was hot, yeah. But we still got some.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
We'll go again. Swear, we're gonna go.
We're gonna hold that to
All
you.
right.
What are
Yeah.
you doing tomorrow? Just kidding.
Yeah, come on down to Michigan.
Okay, let's wait till you're back up in Haliburton, okay?
Okay.
So moving on to presentations now. This is what we all like talking about. That's kind of the sciencey stuff out of the way. What do walleye do? And that's something that, like you said, fish are fish. There is never a straight answer for those questions of, oh, on this day they're going to be down here and here. There's perhaps more likeliness of certain things happening. But like you said, bluebird sky, it's like, where'd you find them? Oh, super shallow in us calm water, sunning themselves in the brightest light possible. Like,
right in the weed.
Doesn't make sense.
This is nice, but yeah.
So going into then kind of what's more in the angler's control. We can't always choose the day we go out. Can't choose the weather that's happening. Can't choose the water temperature. But we can control what we do when we're on the water. So what kind of presentations are your kind of your go-to presentations when you're fishing in May and early June?
Early June.
It's like just after season opens kind of thing.
Yeah, my favorite is throwing a bucktail hair jig. It's super fun, man, because it's like I know the listeners on the podcast or not on the radio can't see this, but what I'm holding here is a 3/8 bucktail. It's a black with this actually has got some olive on it. This is actually a Gremlins hair jig in 3/8, and I also go throw a 1/4 ounce too. So, and those bluebird skies, like sometimes if I'm throwing around those weeds, especially close around those inlets and outlets on around weed, like half ounce looks not 1/4. Remember that? 1/4 ounce. These guys were teasing me forever when I was saying that. 1/4 ounce, it's really good for that. And then when it gets a little bit more windier, then that's when I'll go up to that 3/8. But how you fish a hair jig or bucktail hair jig, when you cast it out there, you want to hit your bail. This is on a spinning rod application, so like a 7-foot. I throw it on 10-pound braid, either straight to it if I'm throwing it right in the weed, or I'll put a leader on it with the FG knot of like 10-pound fluorocarbon. So I'll probably put about 10-foot leader. I find that's pretty comfortable for me. So when you cast it out there, you want to hit your bail and you want to watch your line. If you have colored line like a bright yellow or like a fluorescent green, it's really nice because it's easier on the eyes. You could see it. But you want to see that line get taut. And as soon as it hits the bottom and that line goes slack, you want to put your rod from 10 o'clock, reel down into 8 and give it a nice snap. And when you snap it, you want to pick up the slack with your reel handle. And then you're just going to repeat that. Watch that line go tight. And then as soon as it hits the bottom, when it goes slack, you want to give it another snap again. You can mix it up too and do like 2 snaps or 3 snaps. But when either on that snap, they'll grab it or they'll hit it on the fall. And it's a really fun bite. It's a really aggressive bite. So unique.
I know it was tough.
Sorry?
I was just going to say, I know it was tough. Like when I first started fishing hair jigs, I can't say that I'm a successful hair jig fisherman yet. Hopefully
we're going to make a couple bucktails out of your beard.
But those tips when we went fishing with you, I did feel a lot more comfortable fishing it because it was really hard. Like when I think jigging, I always think of, you feel the bottom contact most of the time. And when you're fishing over rock and stuff, yeah, you can easily feel that when you're fishing small jigs and whatnot, even Ned rigs and stuff. It's easy to feel bottom contact. But hair jigs, you're fishing over like mud, sand, weeds growing up. Your thing's like hitting just like soft foliage the whole time down. Like, what are you supposed to do? So having your eye on the line is actually like really, really helpful to know that I'm working the bait as I should, because I just couldn't feel it.
Yeah, it's again like that was your first time really kind of doing it with me, right? And the more with any bait, the more time you spend on the water with it, like the more confident you're gonna get with it too. Like that's my like every year, like even if I'm not gonna get a bite on it, I'll first thing I'm throwing every opener is a hair jig. So it's I've done it for the longest time since like 2015, throwing hair jigs. It's just or bucktail hair jigs. But
And it is once you understand it, it's very straightforward. It's a bit more technique than you would use for then, let's say, like a 1.5 ounce weighted treble. Like that's
yeah,
that's not recommended, but that's obviously like the cheater way of doing anything. So there's a bit of technique, but it's not hard. It's like you said, it's a bit visual. For me, it was seeing it done by you, and it was like, okay, I understand this, I get this, I can now feel I can fish this effectively.
yeah.
I think my favorite thing though about fishing that style of jig, like one of our favorite jigs, it's not really ripping hair, but remember we had those Berkeley like gliding jigs, Andrew?
Yes, the
With
snap
a
jigs.
3-inch. Yeah, the snap jig. You whip it out and then you would just jerk it off the bottom and then it would glide down and then the fish would grab it and you wouldn't even feel it and then you'd jerk it up again and all of a sudden you'd have a fish on.
Oh,
So it's just like the heart pounding, just like out of nowhere, all of a sudden you have a fish on. It's like that's the exciting part for me.
it's so fun, man. I love ripping hair, and even with that, like even with the 3/8, like this is a Punisher jig. Sorry for the listeners can't see, but a good friend of mine, Jared Dean, who I think you should have on this podcast. He's a hoot, but he makes a whole bunch of tackle for me. I buy from him all the time. He's a Canadian, big in the bass fishing world, well, Canadian bass circuits and stuff. But he makes this hair jig for me, and you can fish that as shallow as a foot and fish it. I've seen people fish it in 20 feet of water, right? Around humps and stuff like that. And it works exactly. You can fish it almost like a Ned rig too at that time too. But I do throw Ned rigs too. Personal preference, I kind of separate, hair jig is anywhere from a foot to 12 foot, and anything past 12 foot is usually like 12, 25 is usually a Ned rig. I don't know why. I'm sure I can get bid on it on either one, but you can rip a Ned again. Like if you don't have a hair, like a bucktail hair jig, you can probably get away with throwing a Ned rig until you're comfortable about buying a. I mean, they're pretty inexpensive bucktail hair jigs,
Mhm.
but for your listeners, like if you just have a 1/4 ounce, Ned rig, just throw a little turd on it or TRD and
Yeah.
full send, bud.
Yeah.
And
I remember
do you have
last
any?
year,
Okay.
remember you were chucking the Ned rig and you caught that giant pike?
We got that on film. I'm like, this isn't.
I got that on drone, which is pretty
Yeah,
cool.
this is
Yeah.
on 8-pound like fluoro too. It was like
Yeah.
Yeah.
30. That was
30.
what, like a 36-inch pike or something?
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
it was big.
that was a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
And
good.
just to mention a few hair jigs, you mentioned the jigs that you use. Also, I highly recommend. Everyone knows Jeff's jigs. We talked about him.
Mhm.
Classic at Cancast. He makes really good stuff too. And then also, I've been using the Jim's jigs for years.
Yeah, Big Jim.
Yep.
I've used a lot of his stuff too.
Yep. So there's many good options of buying locally made bucktail jigs. There's also brands that make them that are made in China. Try to buy some that are actually
Yeah,
made here in Canada. So,
honestly,
know.
if you're gonna go spend some like a bit of money, I would say try to go for your local guys to buy your hair jigs. I tried. You'll catch fish on the production stuff, but I just find you get better hooks with when you go with a local Canadian company.
They're like grandma's cookies. They're made with love.
100%. And hooks that actually don't bend out either. Stay sharp.
And what are there any color preferences that you would have for your bucktails?
You can't go wrong with black. All black. Combinations of black too. Sometimes I'll switch it up. But I think my favorite color pattern is black and olive, actually, because I just feel like it's sorry, I'm having a Blue Moon non-alcoholic beer, people.
Black and olive, eh?
How dare
Black
you?
and olive, I'll show you here. Like, again, this is boy. we're having fun here. If anybody's watching this video, but like this is a Punisher jig. You can see the olive, but I got tons and tons and tons of different colors. Want to see my collection? You guys better stop this and go onto the YouTube and take a watch of this video. But I got white, I got black and white, black and orange. The chartreuse are pretty good. He even made me stuff that looks a little bit more like a perch. Like this is your olive, like chartreuse green and white bottom. This looks someone like a little perch. Obviously, walleye will feed heavily in my area on perch too. So in all your other forage, but mostly if I was going to stick to one color, it's black, all black.
Nice.
Can't go wrong with black.
So that's your go-to then. At what point, let's say you're not catching on it, at what point in the day, or are there certain might day when you might go to a different technique? Or is that kind of something you would recommend, pushing through and sticking with for the day?
If I'm not getting bit on that, especially like I'm talking about this for people who don't have electronics or anything like that. So I'm going to stick to that portion of that. Obviously your jerk baits, if especially if you're, snapping hair around in the weed and on the edges of weed and stuff, and you're not getting bit, throwing a jerk bait. Like it doesn't have to be the Mega Bass 110. Like I always tell all my clients, do what you can afford. Don't spend $30 on a jerk bait. If you can find 3 jerk baits for $10, that'd be your best, because those pike like to hang out with those walleyes too. So you don't feel as bad when you lose at least one jerk bait, but you can rip that pretty quick just for a reaction. But sometimes if you just pause it, be very patient around those weed edges, you're going to get smucked eventually. Another one, if I really want to like slow roll it, it'd be a swim bait. So depending on the wind and everything like that. Hello, sorry, my dog there. Depending on the wind and everything like that, you can adjust your weights and stuff like that. But this is a Nishine, I hope I'm saying that right, 1/8 ounce head. It's got a really nice head, but this is a 3-inch minnow on the back. So this is a Mega Bass haze dong, but I usually throw a lot of Kitex just because they're easily available, especially I do a lot of my shopping at plug-in here at Elwood Epps and stuff. They help me out a lot. And then sometimes if I want a little bit faster, it's going to be that 4-inch. And this is a weird weight. This is another Nishine. So I think this is a 2/7, whatever that means. I think it's a quarter, but
I have those and I'm still confused as to how heavy they are.
Yeah, I know. They're just weird. I'm like, I don't know what 2/7 smell like. What? That's not metric or imperial.
It's just a little bit over, an 8 or yeah.
But those work great. I think I'm missing one thing. I've got them on drop shots too, just throwing around those edges and letting it sit there for a bit, or dragging it, especially with like a 16-inch leader. Depends how far you're casting it, because if you're casting it like 80 feet with the 16-inch leader and you're dragging it, like that hook is only now 4 inches off the bottom, and sometimes you can get hung up in the weeds and stuff like that too.
I know that when we went with you, like again, it was the day we had gone, it was a fairly tough bite. Not possible, but it was a fairly tough bite. And, we tried ripping hair. I don't think we lost a few to pike and muskie and stuff, but I don't think we actually caught a walleye on the hair. I think he might have caught one. Yeah, I think Brian. But then it's like, all right, fishing's getting a bit slow. So he yells next. We go to the next spot, and he puts on a little swim jig, like swim bait like that. And I'm looking at it like, okay, but that's so small. Like, we're here for big walleye. Why is he using this small little swim bait? And of course, because he's knowledgeable, he started crushing us even harder. And I'm scrounging my tackle block trying to find, do I have any like small jigs and stuff?
Yeah.
But I was surprised at how effective. And that's now become, any time of the year, that's a big confidence bait for me, is fishing like small paddle tails. They are super effective, like ridiculously.
Dude, I've gone down to like 2-inch just to get them to bite. Like that 1/8 will fit a 2-inch, but it's small, and it's like, especially if you don't have like forward-facing sonar, you're like, I'm just casting this thing around. I don't understand, but you can still follow that weed edge and throw that out there. But like I've gotten really small, and sometimes right off that edge where all those walleyes are, they'll be like white fish, which is weird, like in like 25 foot of water. And I'm like, walleye, white fish. Why is this here?
They're friends.
They're friends. Not like those bass. They don't like them walleyes.
Going into some of the like we touched a little bit in the tackle for the spring then, but what about your rods and reels? What is like? Do you ever use bait cast? First of all, do you ever use bait casters while doing stuff like this?
Yep. So if I'm fishing like those deeper walleyes that are on like those humps that are in like say 20, like off a weed edge, I will throw like a +2 jerk bait on a bait caster just because I find so the bait caster, like I'll throw it on pure fluorocarbon because I can cast that thing way like pretty far. But the whole point with having fluorocarbon is that fluorocarbon sinks.
Mm-hmm.
So when you throw it about 110 feet and you give it a couple jerks back, and then you let it sit there for a bit, that fluorocarbon will sink and actually pull that bait down farther. And I've gotten jerk baits down to 25 feet of water. It takes a lot of patience, but that's probably the only application I'll throw a bait caster. Was mostly for walleyes, mostly on jerk baits. But they will work on shallow too. But mostly everything else is all spinning rods, like hair jigs, swim baits, Ned rigs. Like you can get away with the 7-foot medium rod on either a 2500 or 3000 size reel on a 10-pound braid. Like most of my rods are all set up like that anyways. Sometimes with the swim baits, like if I'm being really technical, like if you're in the wind and you're throwing a 1/8 3-inch paddle tail, I do have 7/6 medium light rods that are a little bit more moderate, but that's just more to get that extra little distance. And throwing it on a bigger reel like a 3000, I feel like you can get that extra little 10 to 15 foot difference. Make sure it's fully spooled. And a tip for that is spool it with old monofilament, at least half the, like either just under half, and then do the rest of it with your braid, and your braid will go a long way too. Mm-hmm. And to make sure it's actually full, because sometimes you put like 10 pound braid on, and it only fills like half of the reel, and you're just like, well, it's not coming off right. But if you can pre-spool it, even if it's a quarter of the amount, like your braid will go a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or you could get it filled at a tackle shop too. Then from a big spool, you'll never have to worry about having enough.
Like I don't want to deal with it anymore.
Double your lifespan by wrapping that when you've used it. If you have a whole spool of braid, you wrap it onto another reel. So the used braid is now on the bottom.
I do that all the time.
Braid. It's awesome.
I do that all the time. But most of the time, I'll fill most of my reels with like a big spool of 6-pound or 8-pound monofilament that I've had laying around forever. I've got one that's going on for like 6 years.
But it's not seeing the sun, so that's good. That's protecting
it's in my
it's not
locker.
getting UV rays.
Yeah, it's in my one locker, my bass cap, but it's kind of a pain in the butt to get out. But it's almost empty, and I'm gonna look at them like 7 years of my life was this. Like, just have an epiphany of like my life.
Yep. Just to add in one thing about rods, we did talk with Derek from Tactical Fishing Gear last episode, and we did talk about some of the rods. One of the rods that Brian just mentioned is 7.5-foot medium light. That's actually one of the rods, again, that I mentioned that I picked up from Tactical Fishing Gear.
That he just broke the tip on?
No, it just hit the door. That's okay. But it's a 7.6 medium light, and it does have a more moderate bend. So I'm looking forward to using that. Because the reason I got this is actually because last year when we fished with Brian, he had a 7.6 medium light, and he was whipping these small swim baits like significantly farther than all of us. Yeah. And I was like, I need to get a rod like that can whip stuff that far. But I'm going to add 3 other rods quickly, just because these are rods me and Andrew have used in the last year. We're really happy with them. This is not sponsored, but they're all Daiwa rods, just because I feel we buy a lot of rods and we've been really happy for the price point. Yeah. Absolutely. And I know Brian uses a lot of Daiwa stuff too.
Yeah, I use a lot of Daiwa stuff. Like I buy a lot of I have $110 rods up to $150. Some of them have been through the ringer. Like
I know.
I remember seeing some of your guides,
Brian's rods had like missing guides.
Some of them do, but
like, this still works.
But honestly, I've tried them all, and for some, I'm not, this again, like I'm not affiliated with Daiwa. Sponsor me, by the way. But it's just a good price point, and they're everywhere.
Yep, and they're reasonably priced. Yeah. So
And
the first one,
great tip too, I was going to say, if you take off the second guide in at the top, it turns into a hinge tip, which is really cool for jerk. It hinges
not
once.
recommended.
And another thing with a Daiwa, there's finally a warranty place in Peterborough there, which is really
Yep.
nice.
Yep. And the service is really good. I got one of my reels serviced, and
I need one
it's it's
I
amazing.
told him, like, do you want to do like 20 reels? He's like, holy, that's a big order. And they just opened up. So I was like,
now he's retired. He made all his money off Brian. So anyway, those 3 rods, I'm going to go through really quick. This is a rod that I bought at Gagnon's, I'd say like 2-3 years ago when they came out. This is the Daiwa Tatula XT rods. They're the black ones, black foam. These are actually designed for like bass, but this is a 7-foot medium light. One of my main walleye rods. It's been a great rod. They look really, not that looks matter, but they look really sleek. They're really nice looking rods. The rod that me and Andrew used last year almost for all of our walleye trips was the Daiwa Canadian custom rods. Remember those?
I'm really impressed with it.
I'm very impressed.
Like our first, we did a video about kind of our first kind of look at it on the first trip we used them, and using it all year, I'm like, I actually really like this rod.
I like them, and like they come in 2-piece and 1-piece. I have a 2-piece, and this one is a 7-foot-1 medium light extra fast. Just a great overall walleye rod that we use. I got the 2-piece, so it's good too because it packs down for like camping trips and stuff. Like we took them backcountry camping. Fantastic. Now, we didn't get to use these because we just picked them up at the end of last year, but I'm excited to try them out. It's the new Daiwa TDI. They're like really nice looking rods. They got like this like matte emerald
Really
green
good.
color.
a little closer. Let me look at it. Wow.
Relax, I just want to take some pictures of you.
That looks really nice.
Yeah.
Show me the guide.
So
Show me the guide again. Show me your butt. Show me
there.
Oh my God.
So anyway, they're really nice rods. Again, you get a lot of rod nowadays for like the price point. Those first 2 I mentioned, they're both $120. And then that green one at the end, the walleye rod, I think they're like $140, $150, something like that. But anyway, of the 2 that we use, we're very happy with them. We would 100% buy them again. And that tactical fishing rod we're excited to use as well. So you don't have to spend a ton of money. I think that's the thing that we're trying to get to. You don't have to spend $400 or $500.
I think are like 130, 140. It's a little bit lighter. Like it's a really nice rod. So if
They're
you
nice,
are on a
yeah.
budget, I would recommend checking that one out for sure.
Even those,
and if you want to brand you're used to, then yeah, the Daiwa Canadian Customs are also fantastic rods.
those I can't pronounce it. I always get a mix. It's like Procyon or Procyons.
Procyon.
Those are like $80 Daiwa rods, and they'll do just the trick. Like, I mean, you can even get down into that. I tell, all my clients, like, just do what you can afford. Like, I can catch a fish on a $20 Walmart rod or right from Canadian Tire. It don't matter to me. It's just,
I don't believe you. Just kidding.
you don't believe me.
Next video you put out, I want to see you catching walleye on a $20.
How about
I wanna
we go
see-
fishing, and then we'll do a video of $20 or the cheapest rod we can get,
video.
but we'll put braid on it.
Nope. Okay, fair enough.
But it's
20-year-old blue Stren.
Yeah, like again, it's just like those. Even those that $80 mark for those rods are great. If it breaks, then you're like, well, it's $80. Like I got my money's worth out of it. I didn't break the $300 or those $600 NRXs. That I could never buy that much. That I have some rods that are around that $230 mark, but like that's like anything over that, it's like mostly $150 for rods.
Well, you also have to see people, holding their hands and start whacking it off the side of your boat when you're guiding them too, right? So
on them and stuff like that.
yeah, I wouldn't be handing people NRXs if I was loaning something out.
That's why I'm hoping Daiwa is just like, you know what, we'll just Brian guy a help because all of his stuff is Daiwa, so just plugging that in there.
Hopefully Kyle's watching this.
Even if it's beating a dead horse, I'll just keep on.
I think the point that it really stood out to me when we fished with you is gear doesn't make the fisherman at all, or the angler. Brian's gear, when I was looking at it, I was like, I expected him to have nicer stuff, honestly.
Guides
Because
taped
he's a
on.
hammer. Like, you look at his page and you're like, this guy's a hammer. He smacks fish all year long. He does all this amazing fishing. And here he's fishing with like a 10-year-old pitted cork diver reel missing 2 guides, and he's still killing us in fishing. I'm like, it has to do with the technique, and learning the technique has nothing to do with the gear. Buy the best gear you can afford and fish with it, and don't worry about it. So, yeah, rant over.
Hey,
Last thing, go for it.
my tournament partner Cam, that guy, some of his rods is just like, what is going on? Like the reels, like on the bait caster, and you have like 50-pound braid on like a top water plug, and he just demolished me, or on a jig or something like that. It's again, it's not the gear's not. The gear will help you in places, but it's definitely not the gear or expensive rods.
One last thing on kind of the setup with the rods and reels and stuff, but when it comes to your line choice, do you normally, like you already mentioned, kind of using braid, sometimes using a floral leader if you're fishing outside of that thick weed? What, with those in mind, like do you ever use monofilaments, or what kind of weights do you like to use for, or pound ratings do you like to use for your lines as well?
For spinning rods, it's either a toss up between 10-pound braid and 8-pound braid. So if I'm going back to like that, like I use that all year round. I just find it's just comfortable with the 8 and the 10 for multiple applications, even into bass and stuff like that. But 10-pound is pretty standard, but like those swim baits and stuff, I find that 8-pound is a little bit nicer coming off that reels, even though it's just a wee little bit difference on the diameter of it. But again, like sometimes I've just thrown a hair jig on 8-pound braid and done just as good. But the leader, I'll either match it, either 10 to 10 or 8 to 8 most of the time. And I always do an FG knot. I don't know why it's called an FG knot. I think it's originated in Australia. You might have to beat this out, but I think it's a
good knot, mate.
It's a freaking good knot, mate. Yeah. So I think that's what they call it, that. But I think I've only broke off once, and I'll do a video on my Instagram on how to tie it the easiest way. You just basically get the braid and tie a loop knot to your reel handle, and then it's easier to do it with your hands instead of holding it in your mouth. You're fighting the waves and the wind and everything in your boat. So, but I can tie it in probably.
He says with experience.
I could tie it probably in less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes is not long.
Pretty impressive. I know this because I know there's a video and they're saying you should be able to tie an FG knot in under a minute. So I tried, and I can, so I'm sure you can. But again, I'm not rocking up and down in 40-kilometer-per-hour winds.
Yeah, the
in
wind
a
and
basket.
everything. But I got to tie them all FG knots actually tomorrow. I haven't even used this. I used one spinning rod down south, and tomorrow I'm just going to be strictly using spinning rods. So
I just have one more question then with the line. Have you had a chance to use the weighted, like a braided line, sinking braid?
I just bought a spool of it of 8-pound, and I'm very curious on how it's going to work. The only thing that comes to mind when I use it, I'm like, well, if I'm swimming a swim bait, so I'm just going to get into the like forward-facing sonar. So obviously braid floats, and then you get your long leader. So most of the time I tie like sometimes like a 15-foot fluorocarbon leader, and sometimes you could see it on your screen because that sinks, but the braid will start to go bend down. So I'm very curious if it's going to be a little bit more on a 45-degree angle. So your bait's going to actually swim a lot better through the water column.
And have a better connection as well, right?
Yeah. And I'm curious, excuse me, I don't know if it's going to apply really shallow, really, because it's like you're fishing sometimes in 10 feet of water. It's not going to be, you got 5 feet.
I don't think that's its purpose anyways, right? It's for fishing the deeper stuff.
Yeah. I think if you're throwing a tube, like I know this is walleye, but I mean, I caught a walleye on a tube, even on a flipping jig, not purposely. But if you're like hucking a tube like 100 feet over a flat, I could see that being a little bit more. Maybe. I don't know. I'm going to try it out and see what benefits I could find out of it. Or maybe it's just another gimmick.
Just like scent. Now it's next thing is what? Scented sinking braid?
Hey, sometimes I use permanent marker on all my jigs. Like when I'm bass fishing, like I'll just go straight braid right to the jig, and I'll just go with a permanent marker.
Yep.
It's an old trick for a long time, and people are like, I don't know what the fish can. They're gonna see it worse. I'm like, I don't know. I just always done it. So
we're gonna come to you in your, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but your aged wisdom, because you've been doing this like since what did 2011 or 2017?
So I've been fishing since basically heavily 2012, and then when my friend taught me how to flip a jig, which blew my mind for bass fishing in 2014. It's just been nonstop. So
yeah.
I fish.
You got a decade of like seriously fishing, taking people out, showing them the ropes now.
Yep.
We're gonna kind of play on some of that wisdom or dig into some of that wisdom then. What are some common mistakes that you see anglers make? Because you have randos on your boat all the time. That's your job. So or even just in other boats, let's not bash any of your clients, but
I think a lot of people overcomplicate things. I think that's the biggest mistake, because people will look at things online like, oh, I need this technique in this rod, and I got to have this to, this real ratio. Like, sure, it does work, but like the fish don't care. They really don't. I think
I'll tell you something. That hurt just as much coming from you the second time you told me that.
But I think that some people just kind of overcomplicate it, really, until like, I think, let me gather my thoughts here. Yeah, like I've had some people come on my boat and they, again, just overcomplicate what they need for a rod. Like, example, I'm going back to like my tournament partner, Cam, like he'll throw whatever on whatever rod. And it's not specific on like the action of the rod, and like it'll be like 50-pound braid. Sometimes it's like 30-pound on like braid on a spinning reel on a Senko, and it will just like, I'm like, you should only use 10 pound. Okay, this is a good example. Swim, like I know this is walleye, but swimming a jig, right? I think flipping jig, swimming jig. And I'm like, well, I gotta have a swim jig on to go swim a jig. No, he just uses a flipping jig and swims it back every single time, and he whacked them. I'm like it's just, it has not, like I am over complicating it, because I'm like, I need a swim jig to be able to swim that jig back. Not toss it up, bring it back. So it's just things like that. So
you can flip a swim jig and you can swim a flipping jig.
Yeah.
Fish don't generally care.
I think that's about it. I think that's the biggest thing I see is people overcomplicating it. Time on the water goes a long way. So it's you and the fish, and you figuring it out and breaking down your lakes to find those fish.
So how about reading structure? So again, we're talking about like, walleye opener in springtime, maybe edging into early summer. We'll start off with like we are the average angler, and let's say we can't afford, forward facing sonar. We have like the bare minimum. Let's say we're just in a canoe. What kind of things, again, you kind of did go into like looking at some mapping, looking at current. Is there anything else that can help you, or what comes next when it comes to the electronics that you're like, okay, we have to have this because it will help you see this structure, know to fish here?
Well,
if that question made sense. I know I rambled.
So you're saying like without, like what anglers can find without electronics?
Yeah, or with basic electronics at least.
Basic. Without electronics, like again, like I've done this for a very long time. I'm telling you, like everywhere in the Haliburton Highlands, Minden, Algonquin Highlands, if you go to any river mouth that has fast moving water, and there's some places you can get by foot, if you're there at that peak time when the sun's about to go down, now you might need to race to the spot and put an anchor down in your little tin boat and stuff. But you can just wait with that in that current and just throw a jerkbait or a crankbait and just run that back and forth. You might be swatting the bugs because they get so bad. Oh God, I've had some treacherous days out there, but the bite was so good. But like, I tell people that all the time. Like, I get people message me like, "Hey, what should I do?" I'm like, go to any river current with fast moving water, and there's going to be walleye there. And now I'm not endorsing to fish with the flashlight because it's illegal because it's spotting. But if you have your lines out, you can take a look and if you see white eyes, they're going to be there. Just shut your
At
light
least you
off.
know they're in the area.
We're in the area. You'll see all the, the bigger the white eyes and the farther apart they are. It's like, boy, that's a big one. But and even then, like, especially in our lakes right now, like the waters, like if you want to do some pre-fishing before the season opens, like most of these fish are spawning actively right now. So even you can probably go take a look, make sure you have some polarized glasses. You can see where they're spawning. And I bet 100% they're going to be in those areas or just off of that in that little more deeper water. Like I've seen them still like at walleye opener in like a foot of water right in the current or just off the break or something like that. But if you can, yeah.
And what
Another,
would be your? I was going to ask, what would be your number one tips then for someone who, let's say, is on a new lake? What's the fastest way, or what's your number one tip for, like, absolutely go or try this first to try and catch a walleye, to locate walleye on this lake?
exactly what I said.
Perfect. Excellent. I had a feeling it was going to tie into it, so that's awesome.
Yeah. But it has to be at night and like right at that dusk, at that witching hour. And it's the easiest way to catch a walleye in any of the fast water. There's some spots you might have to go look if you can do it by foot. There's a lot of areas in my area in Haliburton and Minden that people do it by, like, they just sit off a bridge or walk down some spot and just literally cast it for them too. So
If you're afraid of the dark,
well, afraid of the dark. I don't know. You're
Glow in the dark
SOL on
paint
that one.
and just paint your clothes first.
Yeah, just fluorescent, orange pylon, work gear, a help whistle. Stop. Don't touch me there. This is my private square kind of thing,
Go with a friend and have them just hold the flashlight for you.
Usually the bugs are so bad, I don't think anybody's going to bother you, really.
All right.
You want me to elaborate on that a little bit with like electronics?
Sure. So what about like basic electronics then? You have your
2D and side
let's
imaging.
say like side scan.
Yeah. So obviously maps is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Maps is really crucial because those fish are still going to be shallow. So if you can just see where those break lines are or like points and look with polarized glasses, they're going to be your number one tool, first of all, because you can see what the weed is. Prior to that, if say if you fished a lake before and the milfoil and stuff is all topped out, most likely those areas are going to have fresh growth weed and probably, not to the top, but just really fresh. Those walleye are probably going to occupy those areas. So they just love hanging around that weed, bud. Side imaging and 2D, like if you're able to go find those offshore humps and stuff like that or points, if it's got a mixture of like a rock pile on it, and if you see rock and weed, and with deep water access, like they're probably going to be there too. I've had it where I've like way before, like I had a little 5-inch hummingbird, I think it was like 700 series. Yeah, and like again, like I'd side image a lot of rock piles on that little screen, and I used to throw marker buoys out. So I would watch my 2D and my side imaging on that, and if it comes up to the top, and marker buoys are very inexpensive. As soon as you get to that top, and if you read, like a lot of those fish will be in schools. Like a lot of big walleyes will hang out separate, maybe one or two or solo. But a lot of the smaller, like when I say small, like 25 and under inch,
I'm like
still pretty big.
So bigger than my PB. Okay.
Yeah. God, now I sound like a butthole. But like they will all be mostly schooled. They're an actual schooling fish. But you will see it if you come around a hump, and you might take a couple passes with it, you'll see them all arc together. But even if you don't see that, it's a hump, like just throw a marker buoy right at that top of that hump, wherever you mark on your 2D, then you have a point of reference where to cast. And that's where, like, again, here's for the audio guys that can't see the screen, but like a Ned rig. So this is a Z-Man Pro Shroom. So this has actually got a better hook in it.
I like them a lot.
This is a quarter. No, I think this is another weird weight, 1/5, but a 1/4 ounce works great. And this is a Z-Man Z minnow or minnow Z, minnows, whatever.
Minnows, yeah.
And this is in smelt color. I throw this a lot, this color smelt. But your green pumpkins, I'm sure your wacky fluorescent stuff, your June bugs and stuff like that will work just as fine. It's just, again, you're fishing at just what I explained about fishing at a hair jig.
I like that low tech of using the marker buoys. I've never done it, but I remember watching like the Fish in Canada guys are up on Lac Seul and they're like, oh, we have the few buoys you marked out, and they're just like, you start fishing out and you go closer and work your way in. And I always thought like that'd be cool to do that, and I've never done it. We should invest in some buoys.
Honestly, it's a very inefficient, like not inefficient. God, I shouldn't be saying that. Very inexpensive. I still have a couple in my truck, but not in my boat. It's just with, now you got, GPS and you can mark a waypoint where your reference point is too, right? But nothing beats than a visual reference point. And that marker buoy is not going to scare a fish. I'll tell you that right away. You might hook it sometimes.
I'll say this too, that you talked about a visual reference, and it's a brief little. Again, when we went fishing with Brian, he has the forward-facing sonar, and he's like, all right, there you can see I'm learning how to read it. Okay, it's 45 feet out. It's directly in line with this handle. You cast that way. And so I would cast, and he'd give me like 3 tries, and I'd be off. He's like, I'd cast. He's like, nope. Cast, nope. Cast, nope. And he's like, cast here. And you would cast like bang on the spot and then just rip it in quick. And then I just cast exactly where you cast. I can hit the spot I want to go to. Yeah. But having that little visual of, there's that little ripple that you just hit, cast the same spot, and I'm within like a foot of it. Like no issue. So
I've done that
having a visual reference is very helpful.
Yeah, yep. Sometimes I'm like, even with some guys, I'm like, you see that white house over there with the 2 docks and the Canadian flag? Cast exactly straight that way. And they might be, I'm like, as far as you can, even if we're talking about forward facing sonar, but like even if they're past, say if they're like 50 feet out and they cast 80, then I'm like, just keep on reeling until I see your bait, and I'm going to guide you through it, and we're going to watch it and do it that way.
We're going to have a few different Q&As that we have, and Jesse's going to be reading some of those. And then at the very end, we're going to, again, you've probably learned a lot from listening to Brian. And he's a very good teacher. He's a blast to fish with.
I had a dance party on my boat. It was awesome.
We did. It was fun. We're going to get into some of his content info for that. Because if you have the opportunity to go fishing with Brian, I say take it. But we have a few more listener questions for him too.
And I just want to say one thing. If anybody's listening and they just want some like pointers or something like that, feel free to message me. I talk to people all the time. I love talking fishing. I'm not going to give you direct spots, but I will help you the best as I can. That doesn't jeopardize where I make money.
Brian's a nice guy. All right. We have...
Get on my bad side.
We have a bunch of questions. I'm going to just maybe do like 5 or 6 of them because we're kind of going a little over time, which is totally fine.
And we try and keep the answers as brief as possible. If you can answer in just a few words, by all means.
Yep. Here's a question from some guy. He says, let's hear the number 1 springtime lure choice. Kind of covered that a bit. If you could only have one.
Hair jig.
Hair jig. In black, in 1/4.
1/4. 3/8 black hair jig. You can still fish it deep. You could probably swim it and throw a paddle tail on the back. That's it. I love fishing shallow for them.
Awesome. Actually, I had like 4 people ask, what's your favorite overall hair jig color? Favorite hair jig color? It's black.
And it's a tie because, like, again, I go back to the current at night. Like a shallow jerkbait or even a crankbait works too. But a jerkbait in the current works great. You could just let it sit there if you really want it to in the current, just doing this.
It's the lazy man's way. I like
people listening, my hands doing like back and forth. It looks like a fishtail like out of the water, like,
Question from James. He says, what is the most underrated walleye lure?
Oh.
How about what's the weirdest bait you've caught walleye on?
It's a glide bait. I've caught 2 on a glide bait. I was fishing the Huntsville CSFL Classic, and there's pike in there too. And I see this big blob on my screen on a pole, and I'm like, oh, that's a big pike. Like, that's a huge pike. So I put the leader on my glide and I throw it. Okay, that's not I got another story for that. It's the weirdest lure after that. And I casted it, and it was like a 28-inch walleye, and I got it on a big perch, crappie glide, on a shine glide. The weirdest one was definitely a topwater over 40 feet of water on a big walking spook. I have a picture of it on my Instagram. I was like, "What the hell?" But I mean, especially if that mayfly hatch does have like, another thing with that, in springtime, a mayfly hatch happens. Like those fish, sometimes they'll be a little bit pressured to get the bite, but if you could figure out that whole mayfly hatch during a walleye opener and stuff like that, you can really whack them.
That's cool. I think the most random bait that I caught a walleye on was I was fishing Pigeon River. I was flipping slop with like a 1 ounce tungsten, black and blue rage cross, like some flipping bait. I forget exactly what. And I flipped it along into this slop pad, and I just jiggle, felt the tap, set the hook, and it was like a 14-inch walleye, and I literally like impaled its head. I was like, "What are you doing here?" And it was literally like July. I was like, oh, "Okay." Anyway,
I've caught him flipping brush and stuff in the rivers and stuff like that for largemouth, and it'd just be like braid goes crazy, and it's like a big walleye. I'm like, they're everywhere, man. I've caught them on like a 10-inch worm too in the pads, like fishing smallmouth and largemouth. So
As someone who hasn't caught a lot, I caught for a long time. I would always say I caught most of my walleye on topwaters, which is true because I was fishing for bass when I caught them, and I caught one on a Zara spook, and I caught one on a jitterbug. I caught one on a prop bait.
at Algonquin,
I caught
yeah.
a few on like on
Yeah.
topwaters, just going for largemouth and smallmouth.
All right.
Stuff.
like screw the hair jig, it's topwaters, buds. Everyone
Just
keep it
floating
on.
jig head with bucktail hair on it.
Yeah, floating jig head with the worm harness topwater. Yeah.
I'll tell Jeff's Jigs to get on that. That's a new invention. All right, here's the last question. Someone asks, what is your boat's name?
Don't have a name for it.
What?
I know.
I thought a weird guy like you would have a name for your boat.
No,
Named your fish.
I do.
Bye, Felicia.
Sometimes I give them belly scratch. You deserve it. But I don't have a name for my boat. No, I don't.
All right, that's your homework, okay? By the time I see you next, I want to know what your boat's name is, okay?
I've gone through so many boats, I've never named them because
Okay. How about this? What's the name of the stick you use to prop your trolling motor up
When I put it underneath
in shallow water?
that's actually my friend Alex May's. It's a really inexpensive way to keep your trolling motor up, and he's like, yeah, dude, this is great. You sit down in Florida. I was like, all right, it's still in my boat. I got a new trolling motor, so it don't fit it, but I would call it the swamp. It was called the swamp stick. That's what it was called.
I remember it's like scrawled on the side of it. We're like, what is that? It's
Alex
just kind
May.
of sat underneath his trolling motor mount.
Yeah, I will say it will wear your bushings at the back of your trolling motor, but it does work in a pinch if you're fishing really, really shallow on like Coochaching for largemouth on docks. When you have a 52-inch shaft, it's just like meant for deep waters.
So where can people contact you, find you, book a trip? Where's the best way to contact you to do any of that stuff?
So my phone number is 705-854-1322. You can also email me at hookedonhaliburton@gmail.com. I would spell it out, but I'm sure you could just press replay in the last 5 seconds and figure it out.
Jesse will take it down below. Don't worry.
I'll take it down below. Yeah.
Okay. I dare someone to do that right now just because out of spite against you guys. Another one is I'm mostly active on Instagram at Halliburton Fishing Guide. It's good for Google searches, so I don't have to pay for people to find me on Google. They're like, Halliburton Fishing Guide. So, and I do have a Facebook on Hooked on Halliburton Fishing Guide service, and you can message me there on Messenger.
If you could give a one sentence tip or final kind of words to say on for spring walleye success, what would it be? One sentence about spring walleye success.
Time on the water.
That's good. Now, just to be clear, that does not replace the quote of the week, which we'll have you do as well. It's like kind of a bonus quote of the week. So now you got to think of a different one.
I got
him.
it.
Sucker.
I don't know if that's anything to do with fishing, but you ready for it?
Oh, we'll prompt you at the end. So keep it in mind. But we do want to thank Brian again for coming on, for sharing a lot of his wisdom. Again, it's great to have like two guys who are very accomplished. Big thanks to Derek for being on last week. Brian being on this week, you got a good rounded view of walleye, something that Jesse and I we love to catch, but are not informative on. So it's awesome. We learned a lot. We hope that you learned a lot from this as well. And by all means, if you have a chance to fish, like right now, Brian, he's taking bookings for the year. If you have a chance to fish with him, you will learn a lot. And I say that with full assurance because I learned a lot. Jesse learned a heck of a lot when we went with him on that day. So we've just kind of scratched the surface on his knowledge, even on this episode.
Yeah, I fish right till the bitter end of November 30th, and I think fall is my. This year, I was mostly targeting a largemouth at the end of it, but there is definitely some big walleyes to be caught in November, as long as you can bear the cold and get some hot pockets. I think the next walleye episode, you should go with someone even farther north, like way north.
Well, we had Jay Siemens on a while ago.
Yeah.
And so we just want to give a big thank you, a bit of housekeeping to everyone who is obviously listening to the episode. Big thank you to you. If you have a friend who you think would like the episode or like the podcast in general, send them a share link to your favorite episode. Get them started on it. And if you have the opportunity, we have our Patreon as well. If you'd like a chance to support us, we have that available. And everything that people are already contributing has been a huge help because it helps us to continue making this podcast, to be able to have, get awesome guests like Brian and stuff, to spill the beans, share the juice, all other food metaphors about getting information, and also to be able to just continue doing this and pay for, time it takes for us to do it. Primarily Jesse, big thanks to him.
Well, it pays for the programs we need, not my time.
Yeah,
so we do appreciate it.
Yeah, so it's a big help. Without you guys, we wouldn't have been able to still do this because we're over 100 episodes.
This is 101.
Yeah.
Darn it! I wish I had 100. But Brian's 101 walleye tips. There's the plug right there.
Walleye 101. That is great.
Dang it! Now we're gonna have to call the episode Walleye 101. That's okay.
Oh no, a great name. Darn.
No, you guys do a great job, and it's awesome that you guys are getting all these people on this podcast and sharing their knowledge and spreading it to make social media is so great for this, even though there is a lot of negativity out there, which sucks. But no, you guys do a phenomenal job, and I love you guys to death, and I can't wait to go fishing with you guys again.
It's reciprocated, Brian. So thank you again for coming on. And before we go, we have, as tradition states, the quote of the week. And to handle that is Brian Johnston.
You ready for it? It's he who laughs at himself never runs out of things to laugh at.
Like on SpongeBob when he's like, you have to laugh at yourself. I do it all the time.